Kuzampola. A warm welcome to everyone, especially Galyum and all the dignitaries. Thank you so much for having me. Being Bhutanese, as the MC said, being Bhutanese is something that is very important to almost everyone in this room, not just those of us who were born Bhutanese, but who have lived in Bhutan for a long time, who have any sort of connection with Bhutan. Now, in the other sessions that you have already watched and that you will watch over the next few days, there will be two people of equal merit sitting here and then talking about great ideas. This session is going to be different in that it's going to be a youngish sort of person, a youngish Bhutanese. My original introduction said young, but then I realized that every MC for the next 3 days is going to be about a decade younger than me. So now I'm qualifying myself as youngish. So this session is going to be a youngish Bhutanese trying to understand from someone as accomplished as Dr. Dorji what it means to be Bhutanese, what it meant to be Bhutanese, and to put it against the experiences of my generation, and together, hopefully, we will be able to answer the question.
Yes, thank you, Phub, and thank you for the very kind introduction. First of all, let me pay my homage to Her Majesty, not only for this festival, but personally, I have been inspired. I have been actually put on the road to selfless service to remote communities some 20 years back, which now occupies half of my life, for which I'm always thankful. I am humbled to be placed here, especially right after two eminent speakers. Actually, I'm terrified, but I will try to manage and see if I can live up to the expectations posed to me by my friends who are the festival directors. So what does it mean to be Bhutanese? This emerged actually from the 6-year dissertation works. I did my PhD, completed that in 2022. Here is a big volume. If anyone is interested, I have the PDF copies. And one of the things that emerged was our identity, how it's constructed on the social media. And so to answer straight, what does it mean to be Bhutanese? To be Bhutanese is actually to be compassionate, altruistic, and spiritual. So just three things, very simple: compassionate, altruistic, and spiritual. It came out of a finding, one of the 4 findings of my dissertation, the identity, spirituality, community, and the sacred chronotopes. So identity came out as one of the findings. And when we talk about identity, it is actually a very slippery topic because it's a very subjective experience. So there are lots of definitions of identity. There are gender identity, racial identity, cultural identity, youth identity, depending on the discipline that you come from. I'm a communication scholar. I'm a from social science. So identity in my work is basically the sense of self. So what do you make of yourself? What is the sense that you get about yourself? To quote a Jamaican British scholar by the name of Stuart Hall, he put simply identity as the story we tell ourselves. So identity as the story we tell ourselves. So look at yourself as an individual. What is the story that you say, especially people of my age who have passed 50? What is the story that you say? That is your identity. So the sense of self that I have come across, or in the findings of my work, is that of interdependent self. So the self that we make of ourselves as Bhutanese is that of an interdependent self, which comprises of a personal self, a social self, and a spiritual self. And that can be seen in our everyday lives. My daughter was here over the winter for vacation. I was down south in Gelefu. And even before she called me or any of my relatives, she actually headed straight for Dechinfu, because that is her spiritual self, because that's where she got her name. So you can see that spiritual self, the social self, and your personal self in playing out in your everyday life. And I think that is more or less what does it mean to be Bhutanese. But I'll be happy to elaborate on that further.
So, thank you so much, Doctor. Now, something that I wanted to say early on before we get too much into this conversation is, as I already set it up, I really think of it as a young Bhutanese receiving instructions on what it means to be Bhutanese from someone who's older. So please bear with us if the conversation becomes a little exposed, and if it touches some topics that you did not expect to hear. And the reason I'm saying all of that, Doctor, is you've in your book you say that to be Bhutanese means to be compassionate, collectivist, and spiritual. And that sounds amazing, but I am a communications person, and I was telling Doctor this before as well, that it felt that maybe I was telling Doctor that it felt that maybe saying these nice buzzwords about what it means to be Bhutanese sounds like a marketing gimmick. And the reason, I have a very sincere reason for this. I'm not saying that Bhutanese are not compassionate, not collectivist, or not spiritual. But when Doctor, in his book, he talks about his community, people gathering around a community temple, all of these things, and I yearn for that myself. I think a lot of young Bhutanese in the audience would be able to relate with me when I say that all of these values, such as collectivism, community, spirituality, it's not as strong in my generation as it might have been for you, Doctor. And so I want Doctor to paint us a picture for me and for all the young people in Bhutan, in the audience right now. Tell us how it felt like to be in a community when you were growing up.
Okay. Before I do that, let me also say that I built my research on the works of Khenpo Karma Phuntsho. I don't know if he's here. On his theory of, which is a short paragraph actually, he writes in his History of Bhutan, the theory of three worldviews that the Bhutanese today have. In other words, the shamanistic traditional worldview of my parents' generation, the Buddhist worldview of my generation, and the socio-scientific worldview of my daughter's generation. So he explains that in his book. I built on that theory, and I looked for a traditional community, which was very difficult to find. So I had the fortune of actually finding one in the remote corner of Wangdi, a village called Lamga, that had no electricity or road or mobile phone. So it was really a traditional community. So I lived there as an ethnographer. And that was a traditional community. And one thing that we can, as an ethnographer, as an anthropologist, is like you observe what they are doing. And let me tell you just three things that I've observed. Their concept of time, nature, and the community. So for instance, time, this morning Her Majesty mentioned about reincarnation. The reason why we believe in reincarnation actually is that time is, there is no time, it's timeless in Buddhism, in this part of the world. And so in a traditional community, the older people will never remember how old they are. They don't care. For them, time is cyclical, not linear. So they would. So you don't ask how old are you. You say, "Korgamchimo, how many rounds of 12 years have you done?" So time is conceived as cyclical, and depending and basing on that, their life, their day is dictated by what an American geographer called Robert Levin mentioned as events time. So you don't say in a traditional community, you don't say let's meet at 9 o'clock. You say let's meet after I release my cows. Or shall we see after sunset? Or, oh, the sun is about to set, and why did you go and collect your cows? They never say, it's 4 o'clock, time to tie the cow. That's not how it works. Nature is at the center of the universe, not humans. So in a traditional community, nature plays the central role. And we also extend our kinship. We treat nature as our family. And as a communication scholar, how you find that is through the languages and narratives. So for instance, we refer to Abgenyan as Apagenyan, means like Father Genyan. The harps and especially the harps, they have the Riksum Gempo, which is the personification of Manjushri and the three other deities. So we extend, Jomo Lhari is like, is Ama Jomo. Likewise, we extend kinship terminologies to the spiritual side, to the natural side, and that's how we say that it is part of us, that it is part of our interdependent self. And so on the other extreme of this interdependent self is what I call the virtual self, which we now see more and more on the social media. And there, time is very different. Time is linear. It's clock time. It's everyone in that, who live in that community, they always go by the clock. It's 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, or midnight. Nature does not play much less role. It plays role, but less. It's more about individualism and less about collectivism. In between this virtual community and the traditional community is what I call the hybrid community, where most of us actually we find ourselves. And so we are a little bit driven by events time. That's why Bhutanese are never on time. This is the reason. Because we don't have the clock time in our genes. We are driven by the events time. So we have these three communities: the traditional, hybrid, and the virtual. So these three communities, while Karma Phuntsho argues that it is generational, I counter-argue saying that these three communities or these three identities are there in each one of us. So it does not mean that you're old, so you are a traditional, you have the interdependent self. You're young because you're totally virtual. That's not the case. And I have defined that, or I have coined that identity as chronotropic identities. Now, chronotrop, for those who have studied literature, comes from the works of Mikhail Bakhtin. It just means time, space. And it's a tool that's used in literature, in the sense that time and space in literature is inseparable. So, for example, it's used to define the genre of literature. So if you see a science fiction, you know your brain is immediately taken to a distant future, of a different time and place. If the literature work is an epic, you are immediately thrown back to the medieval era of Zongpens and Patangs and all the. So chronotrope is a interesting concept, and chronotropic identities means that each one of us, we exhibit our identity depending on the time and place. So I'm here, I'm wearing my go, and here the chronotropic identity that I have will manifest in my behavior, in my speech, in the way I talk, in the way I address Phub. But when I'm home, I'm in a different time space. So there I'm a father, I'm the boss there with the permission of my wife. And my behavior, my tone of voice, the way I speak will be very different. So each one of us have what we call the multiple identities. And the moral of the story is that if the older generations and the younger generations can come together and understand that we are actually living the chronotropic identities of our own, if the younger and the hybrid can come together, I think that will be the start of the harmony, peace, whatever you may call. Sorry for the long introduction.
No worries, Doctor. I think that's exactly what you said in there about the different identity spaces, times that we occupy. I want to dig in on that a little bit because, as I said at the start, you said to be Bhutanese is to be compassionate, right? And the community that you've described sounds ideal, right? But, and as I warned you, everyone, earlier, I'm going to be a little cynical here, but what does that mean in real life? And, even the idea of, events time, it would be lovely if I could wake up every day when the sun comes up. It would be lovely if I could go home when the sun goes down. But the expectations that were put on my generation were different, right? I think I speak on behalf of everyone of that generation. The audience here who might not be too familiar with Bhutanese might be surprised that I speak English so well. And that's not a brag. I'm just saying that because Chilips, foreigners, have often remarked that, oh, you speak English so well, right? And I did not have the choice, right? When I was growing up, English was the language to learn. English was the language to speak if you wanted to be cool. And it was almost as if that's the language you need to learn if you want to go anywhere in life, right? And so while it sounds amazing to live this events time life, the expectation that is on us is to be at the office at 9, get work done, be productive, and build an economy together. So as an older person, Doctor, how would you recommend that I reconcile this difference? Because I want to be Bhutanese, and I want to be the sort of Bhutanese that Doctor described right now. But as a young person who's been taught that all my life, how do I unlearn all of that and then become that sort of Bhutanese?
Well, the traditional community is almost extinct now. The last village I talked about now has the mobile phones so it's not there. But I'm not prescribing a way of being. Rather, as a researcher, what we do is we observe and we try to make sense of what is happening. And so in no way am I saying that you guys should be dictated by events time and so on and so forth. What I'm trying to do here is to make sense of what is really happening. Why is there this generational gap? Why is there the tensions between 3 different generations? And my works, I try to explain by saying that it's not that the younger generation who are more individualistic, it's not that they are not spiritual. In fact, in the social spiritual works that I lead or I initiate, I get the first people who sign up are the young people. I was very happy to see students volunteering for this festival. So, which means that, as I said, the 3 different of identities are there in all of us. Maybe, just maybe, depending on your age and the generation, you may have higher dosage of the collectivist mindset and maybe lesser individualistic. Those of us from the East, we always say, we never say I. we always say, we will say, I don't know, I can say Thukten, so, Thukten, So when Thukten wrote his book, Ashachuk will say, Thukten, wrote one book, Or, this morning I was posting something on somebody became the director of tourism, and I was saying, Damchu, Dakshuriwala, no? So it is always about us and we. This is how we are. I'm not saying that we should be like that, but what is the essence? The essence is that as long as you're compassionate, altruistic, and spiritual, you are Bhutanese. And I think this is, again, we can delve on that. On the question of whether we are compassionate, of course we are. I posted a video of one parking fee collector who was struggling with his son on his back, and then someone said, let's raise some funds. I said, fine. We raised 200,000 within 24 hours. And most of the donations came from people living in Australia. So which means, have they forgotten to be Bhutanese? No. Have I forgotten to be a Bhutanese? No, because that's who we are. We are compassionate. We look out for each other.
Once again, I'm very sorry to be cynical, Doctor, but
please go ahead. Yeah.
I think if you look at something like GoFundMe, right, in the U.S., one could make the argument that even American societies are highly compassionate because, like GoFundMes are being used to pay for cancer treatments and all of that, right? And the fact that it's still functioning, that it's still working out, means that if we did measure compassion by contribution to things like that, then American societies can also be compassionate. And I'm not saying they're not, but what is uniquely Bhutanese about compassion? How is Bhutanese compassion different from that sort of compassion?
Okay, if we are to really go into the nuances, I would say generally the West are empathetic but not compassionate. There is a difference between empathy and compassion. Coming to your observation that even Americans are compassionate, of course, because every human society has emerged from a traditional society. That was studied first by a German anthropologist called Ferdinand Tonnes in his work called Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft, means community and society. So he compares how a traditional community emerges and becomes an urban society. And the theory of Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft is actually what I presented some years back in this hall about how the Bhutanese urbanized societies are behaving or are being in a certain manner or that. So in other words, it doesn't mean that the West has completely become apathetic. That's not true. In fact, some of the courses that I run, the people who benefit the most are actually Americans from Silicon Valley. So the hardest of the capitalist people, they sign up and then they get a lot from the wisdom of our country. So I was very happy to be reminded by Binodji earlier. We often forget that we live in a special country.
Thank you, Doctor. Now, Doctor, moving forward a little bit from that part, two words that come up a lot in your books and even in all the articles that you've written on the topic are innocence and belongingness. Can you tell us what you mean by that and put that in the Bhutanese context? And if possible, what it felt like in the olden days and how you've seen that transform now?
Okay, I have mentioned, maybe some people didn't like it when I published that article in Quinsel, that one of the reasons why we are seeing some exodus from this country, why we are seeing attrition in the civil service is because there is a loss of sense of belonging and loss of innocence, which are tied. Now, by the loss of sense of belonging, I mean Sense of belonging means that authentic connection to your past, to the present, and to the future. So if you don't have a connection to your shared history, if you don't have connections, if you don't feel committed to the promise of the future, if you don't feel connected to what's going on around you, then you feel disconnected. And that is called the loss of sense of belonging. And I have mentioned that it's because people don't feel that sense of belonging. Now, sense of belonging does not mean that you don't have a parent, loving parent, or a job, or a loving boss. It doesn't mean that you don't have properties. A sense of belonging is very dynamic. With each passing year, people continuously ask themselves, do I belong here? Am I recognized? Is my work acknowledged? I often tell my daughters they are so ungrateful. I do, and of course they tell the same about me. So a sense of belonging is that dynamic connection, authentic connection that we continuously have. And unfortunately, dare I say, that our economic structure, all the rules and some of the policies have really disrupted our sense of belonging. So many people don't feel that they're contributing. Many people feel they're not of any use. Some of the people that, actually I did a study just before COVID among people who have left, and many people, the things that they were saying was, and that was a very casual joke, but in it, I think there was some very deep meaning to that. So, do people feel acknowledged? Do people feel belonged? And I think that's the challenge for our leaders, for our government especially, to bring people together.
Thank you, Doctor. Now, on digging again on that, what it meant to be innocent. How were Bhutanese innocent, and how do you see the situation now?
Okay, yeah, the loss of innocence, of course, again, another very misunderstood concept. So a few days back, I was hiking alone in Phub Dorji, and I lost my way. So everyone who has been to Phub Dorji, you can easily get into a marshy area, and you cannot find your way out. You cannot find a bridge. And so someone saw me struggling, one cow herder. So he left his cow doing what he was doing, and he ran to me and said, I think you lost your way. I said, yes. And he said, where do you stay? I said, in that hotel. And he left what he was doing, and he walked with me, all the places, and then till the hotel. And I said, oh, no, your cows must be waiting for you. He said, oh, I'll find my cows. It was that spontaneous, innocent, he didn't even ask who I was. That trusting behavior, that is the innocence that I'm talking about. So loss of innocence or does not mean becoming hardened up with all the cruel things that's happening in the world. It means that you are not corrupted by the cruelty that you see in the world, that you have that genuineness to help others, that authenticity, that spontaneity. I think this Bollywood actress, what was her name? Anushka Sharma. She wrote a long article on our Twitter feed about how connected she felt, how authentic one woman was who offered her some tea. So by loss of innocence, I mean that loss of that sense of trusting others, that high moral compass that we had. And unfortunately, again, yes, that's where we are. And I think just because you're becoming powerful or rich does not mean that you have to be mean. You can still be compassionate, you can still be innocent, you can still be trusting, you can still be ready to fold your sleeves and help others. That is what I mean by loss of innocence. So I don't know if I answered your...
Yes, you did, Doctor. Thank you so much, Doctor. Now, so we're talking about the loss of innocence, the loss of the belongingness, two very core parts of being Bhutanese. Something just out of curiosity, how much have we lost, and is it still salvageable?
Okay, I think the solution was given by Her Majesty earlier, when the story of Yab was documented. If I may be a little provocative, let me say that I think the last train is leaving soon. And by last train, I mean people of my father's generation. The stories that they have heard and they have brought to this century, all the achievement, the pride, the dignity, the honor, the struggle that our parents went through to give us this country called Bhutan. I think there is still something that we can salvage. There is something that we can rebuild. I think that's what we should look for. When I talked about sense of belonging, I talked about shared future. And I think I also mentioned when I wrote about the Gelugh Mindfulness City that at least something we have something to look forward to suddenly, the shared future in something that's coming up in Gelugh. And that will bind us together. So yes, I think time is running quite fast. So we need to salvage whatever stories that we can gather. And I think it's very nice that we have these kind of forums to share, for people like me, almost a senior citizen soon.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. Now, something that I learned when I was living abroad was that my culture, whatever that means, right? My culture is also another vague thing. It's not just about wearing ko or doing chawa before sitting here. I realized that my culture was a list of all the things that will be lost if I don't carry it forward, right? Because if I don't speak English, the Philips, the Americans, the English, they'll continue speaking English and it'll go on to the next generation. But if I don't speak my babigi zongkha, a very specific wangkha that we say, a very specific type of zongkha that is full of humor, full of sarcasm, if I don't speak that, by the next generation, it's going to be gone. And part of what inspired me to do what I'm doing at my company is to preserve that culture, to put every part of our culture and turn it into content, because unfortunately, I think the reality is that we have to turn culture into content if we want culture to survive. And when doctor says that the last train is about to leave, I feel a sense of urgency as a young person to say, okay, doctor, what can I do? Let me know. I have my team with me, and in Dzongkha we say gitapani no, to move my body, to show energy. I'm ready to gitapani ready. Now, doctor, what I want you to tell me is, as you see the last train is leaving, what instructions do you have for me to make sure the train does not leave?
Yeah. Okay. Between 2014 and 15, I taught at Sherapsi, and one of the things that I used to make my students do mandatory was when they left for vacation, they had to go and meet their grandparents and document the story. And it was an assignment. And if they didn't do that, they were not allowed in my class when the break resumed. It was a very serious assignment. So thank you. So I extend that invitation to all of you. The reason, again, is not just documenting. It is about you connecting yourself to your heritage. The speakers before us talked about how we should be connected to our heritage. And when we connect ourselves to our heritage, that will ground you. It's not an outdated story. It's not an outdated myth. There is nothing. I mean, I studied engineering in my undergrad and for my master's. I studied higher physics. I know something about quantum mechanics. Even there, when you, there is something called the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. At the most subatomic level, even in clinical, medical, or engineering technology, there is nothing called, there is no something called certain. An atom can be here, it can be there. It's called the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So what is then, what is provable? Actually nothing. And so, as we say in the academia, lack of evidence is not the evidence of the lack, you know. So if Guru Rinpoche has come, you know, on a flying tiger, so let it be, you know. And you know, it's such a beautiful story. If this house is haunted, if UK is haunted, so that is how it is. So I invite you to connect with your grandparents, find your lineage, because that will tell you who you are. If you are from those of us from Central and Eastern Bhutan, you know, you might be from some noble lineage. It will give you that thing, you know, as it gave to me. I'm from a Cheju Dungju, I'm from a Peling Dungju. It reminds me, you should not tell a lie. Keep your morality on the check. Be honest and be compassionate, you know. You know, and that is a constant reminder that my uncle gives us. So look for your heritage.
So thank you, Doctor. Now, I'm very glad that Doctor mentioned about the principle of uncertainty from Heisenberg, because I think for my closing, I think what I want to say is that there was this 20th century philosopher, writer called Hannah Arendt, and something she wrote has stayed with me a lot. She says that the issue with education systems is that they're built to protect the child from the world, when really we should be protecting the world from the child. And the way I interpreted that was in terms of socialization. What culture are we socialized into, right? And going through Doctor's book about, you know, like sense of community, things like that, what I realized is one issue that my generation has is that if I ask my generation, by show of hands, who here has heard of the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? Who here has heard? And it's much more significant than you would expect from a random place. And the reason for it is because every single one of us here heard it in a TV show called The Big Bang Theory. But if I ask that same, if I make a Bhutanese Zongkha joke, and then ask some of the people here to get that joke might not land, right? And I think that says a lot about where we have been socialized into. We grew up watching Big Bang Theory, so we know Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. We know how it is like to live in Pasadena, California, more so than what we would know to how it was to live in Bhutan in the 90s, right? And you know, I brought this prop up here as well because before this session, before thinking about this session, if you had asked me what it means to be Bhutanese, I would have said this is a green chili. And so I would have said that being Bhutanese means to be able to eat a lot of chilies. But I'm leaving here having an idea of what Bhutan was like before. And more importantly, I'm not sure if it's going to work, but I think as a young person, Doctor, you've given me a way to think about things of how I can reclaim my culture and my community and what it means to be Bhutanese. So thank you so much for that, Doctor.
Thank you. Now, when I talk about being deeply rooted to my culture, our culture. Let me confess that I was like Phub. Until 30s, I had absolutely no inkling about what my culture was. I went for my undergrad studies to Italy, so I used to drink, I used to drive fast cars and go to discotheques like Binod. So I did everything that you guys are doing, and I questioned everything that you guys are questioning. It's a part of growing. It's a part of life. But one thing is never to forget where you come from and who you are. If you can keep that in mind, keep doing whatever you are doing. Keep exploring, keep conquering. Go and climb Mount Everest like that young lieutenant did. Explore the world, but come back home. That's my message.
So thank you so much for that, Doctor. I'm very heartened and I'm very excited to go back home and do that assignment that you've given to Doctor. And let me understand it correctly. You've assigned it to every young person in Bhutan, right?
Yes. Including those friends from India, too. And because the challenges that we face in Bhutan is universal, by the way. I had the same problem when I was teaching in Macau. My students from mainland China and Hong Kong and Macau. So don't think we are so bad, or don't be hard on ourselves, both young and old. This is my request. We're just being human.
I'm excited to go ahead and do that, but before we can do that, I'd like to open up the floor now. If you have questions, go for it. If you think you have a unique perspective on what being Bhutanese means, go for it. We have a little time left.
Yes, there's one gentleman here, followed by a madam.
Hello. Thank you so much, Doctor and Phub, for such a pertinent topic. Of course, you've been talking about, in terms of Bhutanese culture, the loss of innocence and the loss of belongingness. But I think it has become so universal. I can see it at my home when I observe my daughter, that how she is losing the innocence and she is losing the belongingness. I can also see in my professional life the students, the way they are not so much belonged, and the way they are losing the innocence. I can see with my colleagues also. So are we okay with this, especially the youth who is so much consumed in technology, and which is, I think, taking them a little away from a lot of things which we're talking about? So what's the way forward? I mean, are we fine that they, like you, after 30, 40, I mean, they come back? So should we wait for those 20, 30 years? Or, I mean,
Okay.
there's also an argument that, I mean, people should be allowed to live their life the way they want to. And there's also selfishness in a way. So yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, what's the way forward? Thank you.
I think all depends on the parents and the leaders. I think this is where leadership and leaders, not meaning not just the Prime Minister and His Majesty, but also, you have your own sphere of influence. So anyone who has a sphere of influence, be it in a family or in office, you are a leader. It all depends on the leadership. My wife is Japanese, so one would assume that they are very cosmopolitan. In fact, they are not. My elder daughter goes to Deshenpu and Changanghe every month without failure, twice a month. It all depends on us. And again, to those parents, I think we should not tell them what to do. Bhutanese will be the last person to listen to what you say. They will do exactly what you tell them not to do. What you have to do is you have to do it yourself. So because I read, both my daughters read, just for example. And so I was fortunate because I left this country with a mission, which was directly given to us by His Majesty the Fourth King. You guys go and learn science and technology and come back. That was a very strong royal command. So partly we came back because of that mission. And the other was, of course, my father, who always said, we are not, we come from a family who used to rule some parts of eastern Bhutan in a small fiefdom back then. So we have our community to look after. Someday you have to look after your community. Of course, now things have changed, we have Zonghok administration, things like that, but there are still communities and people who look up to us for whatever. So you have a community to look after, and that was the reason also why I come back. We cannot wait. I think we should let people do whatever they want to do because they will not listen. I mean, the young. But you have to guide them, keep reminding them, and do yourself what you want them to do. That would be my suggestion.
Yes. Thank you, Doctor. And I think two takeaways for me there is, one is a proverb in Hindi that I will 100% butcher, so I'm not going to say it, but I think there's a proverb about someone who comes home at the end of the day not being an outsider, right? And I think that's something to keep in mind as well. And the other takeaway is, to all the Bhutanese people, do not send money into my bank account. Yes. One more question from Madam.
Oh, it is Madam Chitra. Hi.
Yes,
hello.
hi.
Yeah, we were colleagues in Sharapsi.
I enjoyed listening to your conversation, Dr. Dorji, after a very long time. It's a personal reconnect for me with you. And the conversation as a whole is insightful. In fact, the episode that you have shared about the cowherder, such incidents were the pillars for us to stay in Bhutan for a very long time, and that gave us a sense of belonging. I am Dr. Chitra from Sharapsi College. My question here is, I want to think aloud by asking, with technology overpowering our lives and AI generative knowledge ruling every step now, guiding our steps, how are we to make society and technology travel together to keep our roots intact and to make the shared values continue? Because there is also a saying, I is for illness and we for wellness. It's the wellness that made our stay more comfortable and memorable in Bhutan. How to make this a continuous episode in the coming future also. Thank you.
Thank you. My dissertation actually looked at technology, and the question that I asked, the research question, was actually how do we come together as a nation? That was the research question I asked in my third and fourth chapter. And I presented that in one of the Vajrayana conference here also. Technology can be used to unite people if you use it properly, if we invest on it. For instance, how have we not united around Senju Gelsen when he was doing some great things in India Premier League? We all united, we all followed Senju Gelsen on social media, on the media. We felt pride, we felt the sense of unity. I think he brought together the country. And it's all because Senju Gelsen was very good at using Facebook and Instagram. So social media can unite. And that's one of the conclusions that I have made into what we call the imagined virtual communities, lifting from the works of Benedict Anderson's Imagined Communities. He talks about how nations are formed, how nations stay together. And I have concluded that, that technology can be used to keep the country together if we invest in it, if we make good use of it. Right now, as we speak, my group, we are using Telegram and WeChat to garner some funds to do a religious festival here. I mean, isn't that an innovative use of technology? How many people have not donated to this or that lahang or that community? We all do. We have all done that. So technology is not necessarily bad. it's not necessarily divisive, it is, but we can also make it, it can also unify.
So thank you so much. I think, unfortunately, I think we're out of time now, and we could have extended a little bit, but the session after this is lunch, and I wouldn't want to eat into that at all. Thank you so much for being a lovely audience. Thank you so much, Doctor.
So, again, thank you very much, and again, I'm very humbled to be able to share this, 6 years of hard, incarcerated labor,
which won't go to waste, because as a young person, I assure you that I am heartened more than ever to actually weaponize or I think operationalize your findings, and to make sure that all the young people in Bhutan do go back and find their roots and really rediscover what it means to be Bhutanese. Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you.